Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Welcoming All Inclusive Hosting Virtual Summit. And I am so happy to be here with Lorraine Woodward again. Lorraine, if you haven't heard this yet, she's one of the she is the co-host. She's also one of our sponsors through Becoming Rentable for this virtual summit. And our topic for this session is accessibility isn't an optional, it's an advantage. So we are going to have a great conversation here with this topic. But Lorraine, first introduce yourself, please. Make sure people know who they're listening to.
My goodness. Well, let's see. I'm Lorraine Woodward. I am CEO of Becoming Rentable. I'm a mom of two fabulous boys and a wife to my husband, Robert. I'm a mother of two Maine Coon cats. I love Oreos, and yellow is my favorite color, which is behind me.
Yes, we love the color yellow. I mean, I do because it's just so cheerful. Because anytime I talk to you and I see the yellow house, which is in another session that people can make sure they see the inspiring story of the little yellow house. But yes, thank you. And thank you again for, being on here. So let's talk about this whole accessibility thing. First of all, tell us why it's important to you. People might not know that yet.
Gosh, why is it important to me? Well, because isn't it always about me? At least I tell my family that it's important to me because I have a disability. I have muscular dystrophy. I use an electric wheelchair. Disability has been a way of life for me. And I recently talked to somebody, actually today, that has a disability later in life. And honestly, I think it's easier for me because it's a way of life. I've never climbed steps. I've never gotten off the floor on my own. There's a number of things that I've never done, but I don't miss them. I think it's having a disability later in life, either through aging, an accident, or injury, where you miss something that you had done before, and you haven't found that outlet of fulfilling that need that you have in your life. And so it's important to me. It's personal, me being a mom of two boys with muscular dystrophy and myself, and to want to participate in, a full life activity. And it's important for me because I want my friends to do the same. And we're not always seeing that until either we create it, like what we've done with Becoming Rentable, we advocate for it, and look at it from a personal perspective.
Yeah, so in the short-term rental or vacation rental world, whatever, term you want to use for, the houses that we rent out and that we list on Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, Booking.com, all of those fabulous places. So let's chat then let's talk first about some of the statistics, of accessible rentals, first of all. Tell us about your experience when you have looked for an accessible rental,
Sure.
whether it was for you, your family, or others.
Right. It was interesting because I never thought about the industry. I knew for our family with three of us with disabilities that travel was challenging. I thought, okay, out of four of us, there's three of us. So we're a higher maintenance family than the average family. So it's like, all right, didn't know that that was really a thing. We didn't travel as much as I'd want to. Our experiences weren't as broad as I had hoped they would be. When the boys graduated high school, I knew for them, I wanted an opportunity for them to have a place that they could, leave Raleigh, be with friends, have a good time, be independent, feel safe. So we created that space 3 hours away into Carolina Beach, North Carolina. So we built an accessible property for ourselves, but then came the time that you had to pay for it. So it's like, oh, this is a good time to look at making a short-term rental out of it as well. So we did, and I was turning 60 in 2022, and I'm like, okay, I want to do one last hurrah, in my career. I done disability, been in disability my whole career. I owned a communications firm, but I really wanted to make a difference. And I sat back and I thought about it, and I was like, wait a minute, I love my renters. And I do. I have the world's best renters. But after 400 families telling me the exact same story, that, finding accessible property is hard to find. And that's why we traveled 2.5 days to your place, or we, flew across country, or we waited 28 years. I'm going, this is crazy and absurd. And so it was through the eyes of my renters that opened up, my thought process about, why is this a problem? Why is it so difficult to create or to, find a place to stay? And it's a lot of reasons. One, we don't think about, an accessible short-term rental, in that, from a business standpoint, and how do you make money? And you make money the same way that you do in renting to people without disabilities. But what does an accessible short-term rental include? And it's that lack of knowledge that people don't know that is bringing it in the forefront to say, look, right now in 2024 now, our short-term rental industry just in the United States is about 1.5 million short-term rental properties, give or take 100,000 or so. And of those, less than 1% is actually accessible, which means that's 1,500. Now you look at the CDC numbers, and it shows that 26% of the United States population, or 63 million people, have a disability. But yet this inventory is so small. And now we're looking at our aging population. I'm one of these baby boomers. So in 2030, I too will be a part of the senior population, which will be growing to 32 million. So here we are with 73 million seniors that have worked hard, saved their money, and want to travel. And we have 1,500 accessible short-term rentals. That is a huge amount of business opportunity. As we look at our numbers, that's $658 billion being left on the table. And that's disposable income just identified for our disability community. That's not the other sectors. That's just our disability community. So you add on top of that our senior community as well. It's a lot of money. So from a business perspective, and paying off this beach property, that, it's a great business opportunity. As well as for me emotionally, it feels really good to be able to make that difference for a family. And there is an advantage. We look at, how do you reach more bookings? How do you get your calendar full? And by just sharing information about your property would allow maybe more people to rent it. And when we created Becoming Rentable, we looked into the short-term rental industry to look at that point in time in 2021, that we only looked at wheelchair access. And so there was minimal information about what an accessible short-term rental looked like. But when it was addressed only in the sense of a wheelchair. But what about walkers and crutches and canes and cognitive? So there's even a broader scope of opportunity as we look at that. And so again, that advantage that we're looking at is by sharing that information so that you can build that successful business that you desire to have.
Yeah, I was at a conference recently, and one of the speakers was talking about there aren't saturated markets, which was really, definitely was going to pique somebody's interest. This isn't about a saturated market. It's because your property doesn't stand out, and you haven't, told people all of the fabulous things. So when I think about what you're talking about, as far as there's really no accessible rentals. I mean, yes, there's a few, but when you compare it to the number of people out there who need or could use an accessible rental, there's really no accessible rentals. So if somebody's looking for a way to get their calendar full and booked, make it accessible. And it seems like a no-brainer, because you're going to stand out in today's world of short-term rentals, because there just is so much opportunity.
And it's funny, because somebody asked me recently, all right, Lorraine, why is this a feature of an accessible rental, such as a driveway with a hard surface? How is that accessible? Well, I can tell you from an electric wheelchair standpoint.
It starts there.
I tell you,
Yeah.
it is, I can drive to the property, and I can
Sure.
get out of the van, and I'm on a hard surface. so that my wheels don't spin. I wreck their yard and getting a trench. Then we've got to go find somebody with a rug, a piece of cardboard, something to put under my back wheels. So again, that hard surface driveway, or where you can park, wheel up your car, and then my van ramp can land on that sidewalk, that hard surface that I can get out. I can go to the front door. I can get through the front door, which is big. So right there, we're looking hard surface driveway. We're looking at a clear path to the front door. We're looking at the width of the door and getting through the door. That's 4 things right there that's going to attract somebody that's in a wheelchair, that uses a walker, crutches, or canes. So right then and there, you've increased the opportunity for those renters to book your property. Aunt Jane really wants grandma to make sure that she comes to this rental. And, you know, she's not using a wheelchair. She holds her son's arm and they walk with her to the door. But that hard surface and getting through the door is really important for grandma. And then we look at, okay, the bathroom. It's like, okay, how wide are the doors? Do you have grab bars? Just sharing that information alone broadens your property to stand out so that more people can rent it. What's really interesting is we do a lot of studies, just again for validations to understanding the market. And we did a study last fall. It lasted 4 months. We looked at a booking platform through the properties that were just listed as wheelchair accessible. We found roughly 2,600 properties that were listed as that. But as we went through, again, being all about me, we looked at getting to the driveway, getting to the front door, using the bathroom, getting to a bed, and then a family space that I could participate in. So that was our benchmark. So of those 2,600 that were listed as accessible, only 16% actually met that benchmark. But then we did the reverse. We looked at properties that were not listed as accessible. We found 600 properties that met that benchmark that had no information included in their description. And so again, Aunt Jane really wants all the family to get together, but yet she doesn't think about those elements about the driveway and the door and the bathroom. And if she's not thinking about it and you're not sharing it, that's not going to be maybe a property that she goes to. So taking advantage of just knowing that information and putting it on your site, including narrative and photographs. Now, that's one of my big favorite things is photographs. We love our birds and our pictures of our dishes and our ceilings, because I swear in the bathrooms, we see from the waist up. I want to see what's on the ground. I want to see, you know, can I wheel through that space? Is that a roll-in shower? Is it a step-in shower? Is it a bathtub? You know, when we sometimes will ask for a picture back because we can't tell. And I'm like, really? That's a bathtub? I would have never guessed. But you also would have never guessed if it's a wheel-in shower because you can't see it. And so again, if you want to stand out and get that booking, then take advantage of the space that you have that to share with folks those elements of what you do have.
Yeah. Okay. So the pictures and how a lot of times our pictures, even though a lot of them are professionally done, they are not showing those things. Because you're right. Like I was just, you know, I just finished launching another rental. Take a picture of the bathroom. Now it's not an accessible bathroom by any stretch of the imagination at this little Lakeview cottage. But you're right. I took a picture of the bathroom and the shower curtain is closed. Nobody would be able to see what the heck that bathroom, you know, even contained. Is it a tub? Is it a stand-up shower? What, you know, what is it? How low is it? How high is it? Do they have a chair in the shower? I'm not telling nobody because obviously I'm not taking good pictures.
That's right. And the shower curtain, that's huge. My other favorite thing that I notice about photographs is the placement of mirrors. I think everybody that owns a short-term rental thinks that every guest is going to be 7 feet tall. And I do. And to really look at where your mirror is placed. Obviously, I'm sensitive to a lower placement. My husband's sensitive to a higher placement.
Yeah.
Tilted mirrors are awesome. Are getting
Yeah.
really tall, a long mirror so that you got both covered. But those
Right.
are, it makes me giggle, again, when
Yeah.
I see your shower curtain. No, it's so
Yeah.
beautiful, but
Yeah.
I really don't care,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
see what's there.
No, and I know that one of the interior designers that's going to be, in the summit too, talks about those tilted mirrors. And that was one of those things that I didn't even know about. And it's like, that's awesome. Like, how cool is that? Because my mom would sure appreciate that. My mom's only 5'1". The rest of us, we're a little taller.
Well, and that's a really
So
interesting point
she's
because so
always
many
like, I
times,
can't see. Yep.
exactly. And when we do think about
Yep.
the height of a mirror and we talk about accessibility, the first thing that may come to mind is wheelchair access, but we
Right.
also have people of short stature.
Right.
So as we're looking at that, do you have a step stool?
Right.
And if you do have a step stool, where is that mirror placed? So somebody of short stature, somebody like your mom and I, who are both short,
Yeah.
can access that mirror. But again,
Yeah.
we don't know that unless we have these conversations, unless we share this information.
Yep. Yeah. So um how else is this an advantage for, to make your property more accessible?
What's interesting, when we first started becoming rentable, we looked at our pillars of who we are and why are we doing what we're doing. So we looked at our disability community, our seniors, individuals and families and professionals who could benefit from an accessible short-term rental. And then we
Yeah.
looked at the inventory side, the people, the property managers who put the properties online. And I thought, we're done. We've got these two pillars. And then I received a phone call, and it was from somebody with the Global Business Travel Association thanking me for what we're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay, but why? And that is because historically, our business traveler has been ground, transportation, or air to a hotel. So employer groups are limited in who they hire. You have to, if it's a job that requires travel, you have to be able to access that hotel. We
Sure.
look at employee retention, recruitment, promotion, and now with an accessible short-term rental, we've now broadened the scope of our business traveler. So
Sure.
now that a business has action behind the acronym of DEI, they're actually doing something because HR says, wait a minute, you can't go to a hotel, not a problem. Let's look at if there's a short-term rental. But hello, business travelers, hello, short-term rental industry. We have 1,500 in the United States that are identified as being accessible. And then we look at our cognitive community. That has never been reached in the short-term rental industry of what
Right.
does that look like? What are the accommodations? And the beauty and the benefit of a cognitive disability, the changes are historically not related to demolition, high cost. I mean, we're looking at a $5 secondary lock on your exterior doors, an odor-free laundry detergent, dimmer switches, making sure that your TV is anchored to a cabinet or a wall. And it's things like that. We put together a budget. So for less than $500, you can make your property accessible to over 32 million
Right.
individuals who want to travel, but haven't had that opportunity because we haven't addressed it yet. So
Right.
again, another advantage. I mean, I think, again, across all markets, looking at disability, looking at health, looking at where we are in life. In the beginning of our journey at becoming rentable, we identified the niche market of people with disabilities. But the more that we have invested time and energy and research, it's like, wait a minute, this is no niche market. This is
Right.
about where are we in life? Are we born with a disability? Do we acquire a disability, later in life? Do we have an accident, an illness, an injury? Are we aging? Again, once we get to that 55, 65 mark, the glasses may be coming in, hearing may be an issue, mobility. So we look at that, and it's really identifying, life and what our needs are in life. And again, with an accessible short-term rental, by identifying all of these things that you do have, broadens a greater possibility of people renting from you. And I would have to say, because if I really start to think about it, I can come up with a lot of ideas. But we're doing a project in Canada right now with the CanStays conference that's going to be taking place. And we're looking at, why should Canada have accessible short-term rentals? How would this affect a government? And so I was talking with Catherine Ratcliffe about this conference, and we were talking about the government's budget, healthcare budget. And I said, an accessible short-term rental can actually save the government money. And she's like, well, how are you doing that? And I said, because, and I received a phone call this actually happened a week ago. A lady called me. She said, I understand you're with Becoming Rentable and you know of accessible short-term rentals. My husband has cancer. We have to be near a hospital for 3 weeks so he can go in and out of treatment. This treatment is critical for maintaining his health. But we cannot stay in a hotel because of the germs. And we really need to stay in a private, but we cannot find he's in a wheelchair, and we can't find a place for him to stay in an hour radius. And she said, I'm really uncomfortable going beyond that hour from the hospital. They really wanted us near the hospital, and we can't find it. And she's like, Lorraine, this is like life and death. And he said, the other option is that Jim is going to have to stay in the hospital for those 3 weeks. We can't afford it. The hospital won't let us. Mentally, it's already hard. And we're looking at that. And I said, well, in Canada, the same thing is true. If you had an accessible short-term rental, you have less hospital days. And so that saves the government money. And having somebody be able to stay in an accessible short-term rental, you've got the mental health benefit. So if we, start looking at the different advantages, there's tremendous advantage for accessible short-term rentals. When we did research on 20 children's hospitals in the United States, we wanted to find out, where do people stay when they have a procedure or they have to be at a hospital and they live 6 hours away. One hospital, well, it was Mayo Clinic, the research, and then St. Mary's, the hospital, said, Lorraine, if you can get us a couple of accessible short-term rentals, we'll name a street after you. And that is how great the need is. So anybody listening and you want to slam dunk, accessible property, go put one near a medical facility, because it can be outpatient, it can be a traditional hospital, but there is a humongous need there. And another situation that I was surprised at was an end-of-life situation. Again, the family needed to be near a hospital. We had a property that was near a hospital. They said, can we come and rent it, not knowing how long? Absolutely. They came in that day. The father died in 14 days, and the family said, Lorraine, if it weren't for your short-term rental, we would still be looking to get a hospital bed in our home. Instead, we got to spend time with my dad. We got to sing songs, laugh, play games, and be with him. And again, if there's not that financial gain that people are looking for, there is a really great emotional gain from having a short-term rental.
Yeah, so let's talk about accessibility as well. So I think because some people, people who maybe haven't been exposed to different disabilities, they look at the word or hear the word accessibility or accessible as being wheelchair friendly, or, has a wheelchair ramp. And I know that is not the case at all. So let's let's get rid of that.
We're going to cover that in this session and not just having a session on that. I'll do my best. I will do my best.
We're throwing that in here real quick because
and the thing about accessibility,
yeah,
and it is about, there's an element of wheelchair, but
Yes.
for me in my wheelchair, I have very minimal independent mobility. I can't like lift my head in a bed. My husband rolls me into bed. But there are people who are in a wheelchair that it's the stamina that they can't walk the distance, but they can stand. A lot of times, you used to hear the word wheelchair bound. It's like, no, I'm not bound in my wheelchair. I get up to use the bathroom. Some people get up independently and can transfer independently. Some need help. They use a Hoyer lift or get guidance with an attendant to maneuver from a toilet to a chair. And there are people who are paralyzed, but have the upper body strength that they want that step-in shower because they don't want water to go over the floor, but they have the strength to lift themselves out of their wheelchair and transfer into a bench, a shower chair, and take a shower. So even among the areas of being wheelchair accessible, it really depends on the individual. And that's why, we created 43 filters, not a checklist of this equals accessibility, this equals access. It doesn't. It really is all about the individual needs. What are your needs? So we do have a 32-inch door, a 36-inch door, and even a 30-inch door. There are people that are smaller in size and may use a smaller chair and can easily access a 30-inch door. So that 30-inch door doesn't mean that your property is inaccessible. But what it does mean by including that information on your in your description or on your site, it provides that choice to go, nope, Lorraine's a wide load. We know she needs a 36-inch door. I mean, it's what I am. But yet Kimberly, who is 19 and smaller, and she actually uses a pediatric chair, she can fly through that 30-inch door without a problem. So it's getting that information so that the renter can make that choice if it's going to be accessible or not. So again, we think, oh, roll-in showers, a must-have. No, it's not, because there are threshold ramps that you can add. There are products available. And speaking of products, I'll do a little plug. We have a Becoming Rentable store on Amazon. So you can now, you're looking for grab bars, you can go onto the Becoming Rentable store on Amazon. You need those threshold ramps, we got you covered. Go check them out on Amazon. And so anyway, but it is about providing that information because there is a question of what equals accessibility. What is that access? And that access varies from person to person. Again, there is an illusion that, you think of that blue placard, on the ground. Oh, you're disabled, you have a disability, you're that blue placard. And, I meet a lot of those stereotypical ideas of accessibility, but my boys don't. My boys are still mobile. One can climb steps with help, one cannot, and mom cannot. But they can go into a step-in shower. We have a gentleman renting a property in May. He's paralyzed from the waist down, and he's a very athletic person. And we have a roll-in shower, but all he cares about is to have that shower chair so he can transfer over there. And so again, it's including information is what makes something for that person to know if it's accessible or not.
I love that. Okay. Thank you.
And we have 43 filters. And so people can go to the Becoming Rentable website and look at all the different ways. I'm happy to share them with you. Again, it's think of, what, if you really want to think about being in a wheelchair, sit in an office chair, roll around your house, your rental, and look at it from that perspective. Can you get your knees under a table? Can you access the plates? Do you have open shelving? How wide is that door? But again, it's all about what the needs of the renter are.
Yeah, I love it. So hopefully we'll be seeing a whole lot more accessible rentals coming up soon too now.
Well, and
sharing this.
I'll put a plug in for our certification. Becoming Rentable has we're a listing platform. We don't take commission. We are just that one-stop shop. So if you're a booking platform and you have an accessible short-term rental, we can certify that. And somebody just reached out to me, in fact, this morning and said, Lorraine, talk to me about what is a certified, accessible short-term rental. And it's where we look at and evaluate and validate what you have is accessible, because in booking, it's self-identified what you have. So you think, okay, I got that suction cup, grab bar in the bathtub because that's what mom needs. That's an accessible product. So we must be accessible. So they clicked on that button, not thinking about the 5 steps to get into the front door, the garage door, and the back door. They didn't think about how wide or large that door is. What are the features in the bathroom? And so again, having that information that people can look at is important. And what's more important is to validate that information, because there's so many times you get there and you're going, great, now I can't go to the bathroom. I can't get into the bedroom. So we identify of what you have, and then we validate it so that when you see that certification medallion, as a potential renter, you can go to that property without a doubt and have confidence that what you see is what you're going to get. And that is critical as we all are looking at that user experience. We want our renter, they've saved their money. They have 1 week a year that they may go on vacation, and they want it to be the best vacation. And there's nothing worse than going on vacation and going, wait a minute, I can't go to the bathroom. I can't get in the bedroom, and having that surprise, whatever that surprise is, it's not always fun to have that surprise. So we are that third party. So it's not your staff going, oh, we'll fudge this a little bit because I got to meet my quota this week. It's really accessible. No, that's not what we do. We go through a 3-prong approach and having it validated. And now we also do that also for cognitive. So that again, you want to know without a doubt, have great confidence, get a Becoming Rentable certification.
Sure. Fabulous.
Thank you.
All right. So what else does Lorraine want to make sure that people know about accessibility not being optional, and how it's, it isn't so
because it's a way of life. It's where we are. And as a businesswoman looking at meeting the needs of my potential renters, if I am going to do the best that I can do, then it's my job to put this information in my description, show the pictures, to give it the full value that it deserves. And to me, that is not an option for me, because I want to book my property. I want to get my property paid off. And so that's the advantage that I take it. I take the advantage of that advantage.
So now we've talked a little bit about the numbers just a little bit ago about not only the people who are currently have some form of disability, plus when you add in the aging, and how many more of them there'll be. So currently it's like 1 in 5 people have some form of disability.
It's 1 in 4 now. So it's actually 1 in 3 dot something, because it's 63 million Americans and 27% of our population. So that's a lot. And now we add, I think it's 34 million seniors, a lot of seniors. And then we add our business community. So as we start really looking at it, and as we talked earlier about where we are in life, it really is all of us. I don't know that there would be a fraction of people, and I don't even believe in my mind that there is a fraction who could not benefit from. I used to say when we built our first accessible property, who loved it the most were the movers and my husband. At the time, Robert would have a kid on his hip. He'd have his brief, and Nathan would run out to the car because daddy's home. So Robert would pick up Nathan, have him on his hip. At the time, carrying a briefcase, because that's what he did. He had a briefcase. He could do a little elbow action because we had the lever handle doors. Bring that down, open the door, still briefcase in hand, child on hip, give a swing on the hip, close the door, It's an accessible 36-inch door, zero threshold entry, and he could benefit. The movers, when we moved to our next accessible property, loved it. So, the benefits are very broad. My father-in-law used to hate curb cuts. And he fell down the very first time that I met him. We were having dinner, and it was interesting because they lived in a two-story house, and you came in on the bottom floor, but the living, kitchen, master or primary bedroom was on the second floor. So I couldn't climb steps, but I could crawl up them. I said, Robert, go in and keep your dad company. I'm going to crawl up the steps. When I get to the top, I'm going to say, hey, Robert, could you come here? Because I didn't want his dad to know that I had a disability first. Again, that illusion of what, oh, you're bringing home a girl that can't climb steps. What is he going to think of me? Again, the emotional aspect of having a disability. And so anyway, so Robert helped me up. We got in, we're having dinner. My father-in-law, who I adored, I loved the man. And he was cussing like a sailor about the curb cuts, because he was walking, reading his mail, because he goes to a mail place, unlocked it, and he fell. And he just was like, I can't believe, we have to have all these curb cuts because of these people in wheelchairs and stuff. There are other people who, he just went off, and Robert was just like, oh my God, Dad. And I said, you know what, Bob? I think that the UPS and Federal Express people would disagree with you. And let's remember our moms and strollers. Those curb cuts really do benefit a lot of people. The best part of Bob is he became my greatest advocate. His name was Bob Woodward. He lived in Northern Virginia. He happened to be a writer and a brilliant man who I loved him dearly, miss him every day, but I talk to him every day. And but my favorite story with Bob was we'd call and make dinner reservations, and we'd say, this is for Bob Woodward. And they would always ask, oh, the Bob Woodward? Bob's like, well, yeah, the Bob Woodward. And so we would go to the restaurant, and it's like, reservations, Bob Woodward. And they'd be looking, and it's like, I'm Bob Woodward. And it wasn't the more famous author, Bob Woodward. And so we got into great restaurants that were accessible because my mother-in-law knew I used a scooter and that I couldn't get into somewhere. And he would, Fairfax, Virginia, knew all about the benefits of an accessible community
No.
because of Bob Woodward, because he was such an advocate, because he
Nice.
didn't see it from that personal perspective until he met me, and then until he had
Right.
grandchildren. And then the value became invaluable for him to be an advocate. And it is invaluable to us as an industry, as a property owner, and it's not an option to not include it and to take advantage of it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, the personal stories too, because it always helps, so much when you can, just kind of relate that to somebody that you're meeting. So thank you for sharing all of that with us today. So if people have questions, they can go first of all to your website, becomingrentable.com, and they can find your Amazon list on there. They can also look to get their property certified as accessible and check the check boxes that apply to their property.
Correct.
And then get that certification and be listed on Becoming Rentable so that they can get more guests.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a win-win.
It is. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lorraine. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your help.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. And thank you for hosting this great summit. Great work.
Thank you.